The mistake happened on a Tuesday morning in the Galactic Administration office on Station 12. A tired clerk named had been working for 16 hours straight. Her 4 eyes were heavy with sleep, and her clawed fingers moved slowly across the holographic keyboard. She had processed over 3,000 student applications that day. She was not paying attention when she clicked the wrong button. The file belonged to a human girl named from a small blue planet called Earth, had applied for the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program. It was a simple program where young beings from different planets learned about art, music, and language. It was safe. It was boring. It was perfect for a species as fragile as humans. But tired Claw clicked the wrong folder. Instead of the Cultural Exchange Program, she sent application to Military Academy. Was not safe, was not boring, was where the galaxy sent its most dangerous species to become even more dangerous. The Academy trained soldiers, assassins, and warriors. Its students had claws that could cut through metal. They had teeth that could break bones. They had skin that could stop bullets. The average student weighed 500 pounds and stood 8 feet tall. Humans weighed about 150 pounds. They stood about 5.5 feet tall. They had no claws. They had no fangs. Their skin was soft and easy to cut. By galactic standards, humans were prey animals. The acceptance letter arrived at its home 3 days later. She was eating breakfast with her grandmother when her communication device made a sound. She looked at the screen and read the message twice. Then she read it a third time. "Grandmother," said slowly, "I think something strange happened." Her grandmother, a small woman named Sook, looked up from her rice. "What is it, child?" "I got accepted to Military Academy." Sook dropped her spoon. "That cannot be right. You applied for the exchange program, the one with the painting and the singing." "I know," said. She was still staring at the screen. "But this letter says I have been selected for. It says a transport ship will pick me up in 2 days." "This is a mistake," Sook said firmly. "We must contact them immediately. We must fix this." Did not answer right away. She was reading the information packet that came with the acceptance letter. It described the academy in great detail. It talked about the survival training, the combat exercises, and the high death rate among first-year students. One section mentioned that the academy provided excellent medical care for students who lost limbs during training. Most people would have been terrified. Most people would have called the administration office immediately to correct the error. Most people would have stayed on Earth where it was safe. Was not most people. A small smile appeared on her face. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a confused smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found something interesting. "I think I will go," said. Sook stared at her granddaughter like she had grown a second head. "Have you lost your mind? You will die there. You are small. You are soft. You cannot fight creatures with claws and fangs." "Maybe," agreed, "but it sounds exciting." "Exciting? Child, did you read the part about the death rate?" "I did." Smile grew wider. "Did you read the part about the graduation ceremony? They give you a medal made from a star fragment. I have always wanted to touch a piece of a star." Sook put her face in her hands. She had raised since the girl was 3 years old after her parents died in a car accident. She knew her granddaughter better than anyone. She knew that once decided something, nothing could change her mind. The girl was stubborn like a mountain. "The galaxy thinks humans are weak," continued. "Every species looks at us and sees easy prey. Maybe it is time someone showed them different." "And you think you can do that?" Sook asked. "One small girl against an academy full of monsters." Stood up from the table. She was not tall. She was not muscular. She looked like any ordinary 20-year-old human girl. But there was something in her eyes that was not ordinary. It was a fire that had been burning since she was born. "I do not know if I can," admitted, "but I want to find out." 2 days later, the transport ship arrived. It was a massive vessel that blocked out the sun when it descended from the clouds. The pilot was a creature with gray skin and 6 arms. He looked at his passenger manifest and then looked at. Then he looked at the manifest again. "There must be an error," he said. "This says you are going to." "That is correct," said cheerfully. She was carrying a single bag over her shoulder. It contained clothes, some books, and a photograph of her grandmother. "But you are human," the pilot said. He sounded confused. "Humans do not go to, humans cannot survive." "I guess we will see," replied. She walked past him and climbed into the ship. The pilot stood there for a long moment. He had been flying transport ships for 40 years. He had carried soldiers, criminals, and politicians. He had never carried anyone who smiled while walking toward almost certain death. He shook his head and returned to the cockpit. It was not his job to question orders. If the administration office said this human was supposed to go to, then to she would go. The ship lifted off and flew toward the stars, sat by a window and watched Earth grow smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny blue dot in the darkness. She did not feel sad. She did not feel scared. She felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt alive. The journey took 7 days. During that time, learned everything she could about the academy. She read about its history, its famous graduates, and its many traditions. She studied the different species that attended the school. She memorized their strengths and their weaknesses. On the 7th day, the ship entered the system. The academy was built on a moon that orbited a gas giant. The moon had a red surface and a thin atmosphere. It looked like a place where things went to die. The pilot's voice came through the speakers. "We are beginning our descent. Passenger, please prepare for landing." Stood up and grabbed her bag. Through the window, she could see the academy buildings in the distance. They were massive structures made of black stone and metal. They looked like fortresses designed to survive wars. The ship landed on a platform near the main entrance. When the door opened, stepped out into her new life. The air was cold and smelled like sulfur. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth, making her feel heavy. But she was still smiling. She was ready. The registration hall was filled with monsters. That was the only word could think of when she walked through the doors. Creatures of every shape and size filled the massive room. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had exoskeletons that clicked when they moved. All of them were huge. All of them were terrifying. And all of them were staring at her. The room went quiet when entered. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the small human girl with the bag over her shoulder. Conversation stopped. Movement ceased. For a long moment, nobody made a sound. Then the laughter started. It began as a low rumble from somewhere in the back of the room. Then it spread like fire through dry grass. Soon the entire hall was filled with the sound of alien laughter. Some creatures howled. Some creatures clicked. Some creatures made sounds that human ears could barely process. But they were all laughing at the same thing. They were laughing at. She stood in the doorway and waited for the laughter to stop. It took almost 2 minutes. When it finally died down, a massive creature pushed through the crowd and approached her. He stood nearly 9 feet tall and was covered in green scales. His eyes were yellow with black slits for pupils. His mouth was filled with teeth that looked like daggers. "Are you lost, little thing?" the creature asked. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "The nursery is on a different planet." More laughter from the crowd. Looked up at the creature. She had to tilt her head back very far to see his face. "I am not lost," she said calmly. "I am here for registration." The creature blinked, his slitted eyes narrowed. "Registration for Academy." "Yes." "You are joking." "I am not." The creature leaned down until his face was close to hers. His breath smelled like rotting meat. His teeth were inches from her nose. Most beings would have fainted. Most beings would have run away screaming. Did not move. She did not even blink. "Little human," the creature growled. "Do you know what happens to prey animals at this academy? We eat them. That sounds like a waste of tuition money, replied. The creature stared at her. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then, slowly, a strange sound came from the creature's throat. It took a second to realize he was laughing, not mocking laughter like before, real laughter. You have courage, little thing, he said. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. My name is, I am a third-year student here. I look forward to seeing how long you survive. My name is, she replied. I look forward to graduating. Laughed again and walked away, shaking his massive head. The crowd parted to let pass. They were no longer laughing. They were watching her with something that might have been curiosity, or perhaps hunger. It was hard to tell with alien faces. Found the registration desk at the back of the hall. Behind it sat a creature that looked like a giant insect. She had 6 legs, 4 arms, and compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow colors. Her exoskeleton was a deep purple, and her mandibles clicked softly as she worked. Name, the insect asked without looking up. You from Earth? The clicking stopped. The insect looked up slowly. Her compound eyes seemed to study every inch of his body. You are the human. I am a human, yes. We received a message about you, the insect said. The administration office says there was an error. Your file was placed in the wrong folder. You were supposed to go to a cultural exchange program. Felt her heart beat faster. This was the moment. If she wanted to leave, this was her chance. She could go back to Earth. She could be safe. She could live a normal, boring life. Is there a problem with my application? Asked. The insect tilted her head. The error has been noted. We can arrange transport back to your planet if you wish. Was quiet for a moment. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about her small house on Earth. She thought about the life she would have if she went back. It would be comfortable. It would be peaceful. It would be empty. I do not wish to leave, said. I want to stay. The insect's mandibles clicked rapidly. It was impossible to read her expression, but thought she might be surprised. You understand what this academy is. You understand the dangers. I do. Many students die here, strong students, students with natural weapons and armor. You have neither. I know. Then why do you want to stay? Thought about the question carefully. She thought about all the reasons she could give. She could talk about proving humanity's worth. She could talk about seeking adventure. She could talk about wanting to be more than just another ordinary person living an ordinary life. But in the end, she gave a simpler answer. Because I want to see what I am capable of. The insect studied her for a long moment. Then she turned back to her computer and began typing. Very well. Your room assignment is Building 7, Floor 3, Room 42. Your orientation begins tomorrow at sunrise. Do not be late. She handed a small card with her information on it, took it and bowed slightly. Thank you. Do not thank me, the insect said. I am simply processing paperwork. Whether you live or die is not my concern. Smiled. Then I will try not to create more paperwork for you by dying. She turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted again to let her pass. She could feel their eyes on her back. She could hear their whispered conversations. They were talking about her. They were wondering how long she would last. She would show them. Building 7 was on the other side of the campus. Walked slowly, taking in her new environment. The academy was even larger than she had expected. There were training fields, combat arenas, and weapons storage buildings. There were medical centers that looked more like butcher shops. There were memorials for students who had died during training. There were a lot of memorials. Reached her building as the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and red, painting the black stone walls with color. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and found room 42. When she opened the door, she discovered she had a roommate. The creature inside was like nothing had ever seen. She had the body of a giant spider with 8 long legs that ended in sharp points. Her upper body was humanoid, with 2 arms and a head that looked almost feminine. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were solid black. The spider creature looked at and hissed, "What are you doing here?" "This is my room," said. She held up her card. "Room 42. "Impossible. I requested a private room." "I am sorry. I did not choose the assignment." The spider creature moved toward with frightening speed. In less than a second, she was standing directly in front of the human girl. Her face was inches away. Her black eyes reflected its image back at her. "I could kill you in your sleep," the spider creature said. "I could wrap you in silk and drain your fluids. It would be easy. You are so small, so fragile." Met her gaze steadily. "You could, but then you would have to find a new roommate, and I hear the administration office does not like processing extra paperwork." The spider creature stared at her. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then suddenly she laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes made of bone. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said. "Probably both," admitted. The spider creature stepped back. "My name is, I am from the Silk World. I am here because my mother wants me to bring honor to our family. I do not actually want to kill you. I just wanted to see how you would react." "My name is, I am from Earth. I am here because of a clerical error, and I am glad you do not want to kill me." Made the bone chime laugh again. "You are strange, human. I have never met anyone like you. This might be an interesting year." Smiled and set her bag on the empty bed. Outside, the sun finished setting and darkness covered the academy. Tomorrow, her training would begin. Tomorrow, she would face challenges that could kill her. But tonight, she had made something unexpected. She had made a friend. The first survival exam came 3 weeks into the semester. Had spent those weeks learning, watching, and preparing. She attended every class. She studied every textbook. She observed every student. She noticed things that others missed. She learned which species were strong but slow. She learned which species were fast but fragile. She learned which species were deadly but overconfident. Most importantly, she learned that being underestimated was a weapon. The exam was simple. 100 students would be dropped into a volcanic wasteland called the Burning Fields. They would have no food, no water, and no weapons. They would have to survive for 7 days. The last 50 students standing would pass. The others would fail. Some would die. Instructor explained the rules on the morning of the exam. He was a reptilian creature with dark red scales and a scar that ran from his forehead to his chin. He had been a soldier for 50 years before becoming a teacher. He had killed more beings than most students could count. "The Burning Fields will test everything you have," said. His voice was cold and flat. "It will test your strength. It will test your speed. It will test your will to survive. Many of you will want to quit. Quitting means failure. Some of you will want to die. Dying also means failure." He paused and looked directly at. She was standing at the front of the group, looking up at him without fear. "Some of you should not be here at all," continued. "But the rules say everyone must participate. There are no exceptions." "I do not want an exception," said quietly. Heard her, his yellow eyes narrowed. "The Burning Fields have killed students twice your size, human. They have killed students with armor and claws and venom. What makes you think you can survive?" "I do not think anything," replied. "I just plan to try." The transport ships dropped the students into the wasteland 1 hour later, landed on a rocky plateau near the center of the zone. The ground was hot beneath her feet. The air smelled like sulfur and ash. In the distance, she could see volcanoes releasing streams of glowing lava. She had 7 days to survive. She had nothing but the clothes on her back. She started by looking around carefully. Other students were already running toward the mountains or the valleys, searching for shelter and resources. They were moving fast, using their powerful bodies to cover ground quickly. Moved slowly, she examined the rocks, she tasted the air, she listened to the sounds around her, she was looking for something specific. After an hour of searching, she found it. A small stream of water was trickling from a crack in a boulder. The water was warm but clean. She followed the stream to its source and discovered a small cave hidden behind some rocks. The cave was cool and dark. It would protect her from the heat during the day. She had found shelter, she had found water, now she needed food. The volcanic wasteland was not completely dead. Strange plants grew in the cracks between rocks. Small creatures in the shadows. Spent the rest of the first day observing the ecosystem. She watched which animals ate which plants. She watched which plants grew near water. She watched which creatures were prey and which were predators. By sunset, she had identified 3 types of edible plants and 2 types of small animals she could catch. She was not going to starve. On the second day, she started building traps. She used rocks and vines to create simple snares. She dug small pits and covered them with loose ground. She created tripwires that would alert her to approaching threats. Other students laughed when they saw what she was doing. A large creature with 4 arms and tusks stopped near her cave on the 3rd day. He looked at her traps and shook his massive head. "You are wasting your time, human," he said. "Those little traps will not catch anything important." "They are not meant to catch anything important," replied. "They are meant to catch food." "Food," the creature laughed. "I do not need traps for food. I am the predator here. I take what I want." "That is one way to survive," agreed. "But it uses a lot of energy, and energy is hard to replace in this environment." The creature snorted and walked away. He was still laughing as he disappeared over a ridge. 3 days later, found his body at the bottom of a cliff. He had been chasing prey and had not noticed the unstable ground. He had fallen and broken his neck. His strength had not saved him. Said a quiet prayer for him and continued on her way. By the 4th day, news of the human was spreading through the wasteland. Other students had expected her to die quickly. Instead, she was thriving. She had water. She had food. She had shelter. She was using less energy than anyone else because she was not constantly hunting or fighting. Some students tried to take her resources. They came to her cave expecting an easy target. They found something else. The first attacker was a creature covered in sharp spines. He charged into his cave at night expecting to find her sleeping. Instead, he triggered a trap. A pile of rocks fell on his head, stunning him. By the time he recovered, was gone. She had moved to a backup location she had prepared earlier. The second attacker was smarter. She was a creature with chameleon skin who could turn invisible. She stalked for half a day before making her move, but had noticed small disturbances in the dust, footprints that appeared from nowhere. She led the invisible hunter into a narrow canyon where she had prepared a surprise. When the hunter attacked, she fell into a pit covered with sharp rocks. The hunter survived, but was too injured to continue the exam. She had to call for emergency extraction. The third attacker was the most dangerous. He was a creature made of living rock, nearly indestructible. He walked through traps like they were not there. Rocks bounced off his stone skin. Pits could not hold him. He seemed unstoppable. Ran, she did not try to fight, she did not try to hide. She simply ran. The rock creature chased her across the wasteland. He was slow but tireless. He did not need to eat or drink or rest. He just kept coming, hour after hour, following her trail across the burning ground. But had learned something important about her pursuer. She had noticed that when he stepped in the warm streams, steam rose from his body. The water was cooling him down, and creatures made of rock had a weakness that few people knew about. She led him toward the largest volcano in the region. The ground grew hotter and hotter. The rock creature did not seem to notice at first. Then his steps began to slow. His stone skin started to crack. The extreme heat was affecting him in ways he had not expected. When they reached the edge of a lava field, stopped running. She turned to face her pursuer. He was barely moving now. His body was covered in cracks. Pieces of stone were falling off his arms and legs. "How?" he asked. His voice was like grinding gravel. "How did you know?" "I watched," said. "I noticed that you avoided the hottest areas. I noticed that you relaxed when you crossed cool water. Your body is made of rock, but rock expands and contracts with temperature. Rapid temperature changes cause cracks. I just helped the process along." The rock creature fell to his knees. He was not dead, but he could no longer move. He would have to call for extraction. "You are not what I expected, human," he said. "I know," replied. "Nobody ever expects the prey to think." She left him there and returned to her cave. 5 more days remained in the exam, but was not worried anymore. She had proven something important. She had proven that survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being the. When the exam ended, 53 students had passed. Was one of them. She had not just survived. She had thrived. She had done it without claws, without fangs, without armor, without any of the natural weapons that other species took for granted. She had done it with her mind. As the transport ship carried her back to the academy, instructor found her sitting alone by a window. He stood beside her in silence for a long moment. "I have been teaching at this academy for 20 years, he finally said. "I have never seen anyone survive the way you did." "Thank you," said. It was not a compliment, it was an observation. He paused. "I am curious, human. What made you think you could do this?" Looked out the window at the stars. "On my planet we have a saying, humans are not the strongest, we are not the fastest, we are not the deadliest, but we are still here. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. We did it by thinking, by adapting, by refusing to give up." She turned to look at. "I am not special, I am just human, and humans do not know how to quit." Studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought." He walked away without another word, but noticed something in his eyes that had not been there before. It was respect. Word spread quickly at academy. In the dining halls and training fields, students whispered about the human girl who had survived the burning fields. They talked about her traps. They talked about how she had outsmarted the rock creature. They talked about how she had done what many powerful students could not do. Notice the change in how others looked at her. Before the exam, they had looked at her with amusement or hunger. Now they looked at her with something else, curiosity perhaps, or caution. They were no longer sure what to make of her. This was exactly what wanted. The weeks that followed brought new challenges. There were tests in poison resistance, where students had to survive exposure to various toxins, study the chemical properties of each poison, and learn to prepare her body in advance. She ate specific foods that helped neutralize certain toxins. She controlled her breathing to slow the spread of poison through her blood. She did not have a natural immunity like some species, but she found other ways to survive. There were tests in zero-gravity combat, where students fought in a chamber with no up or down. Most species relied on their strength and natural weapons to win. Used physics. She learned to push off surfaces at precise angles. She used her opponent's mass against them, redirecting their attacks rather than blocking them. She could not overpower anyone, but she could outmaneuver almost everyone. There were tests in psychological warfare, where students faced their deepest fears in virtual reality simulations. Many powerful warriors broke down in these tests. They faced visions of failure, of weakness, of being less than they believed themselves to be. Faced visions of her grandmother dying, of being alone in the universe, of being nothing but a small creature in an endless void. She passed the test in record time. "How?" her instructor asked afterward. "How did you face those fears so quickly?" "Because they are real," replied. "My grandmother will die someday. I am alone in the universe. I am a small creature in an endless void. These are not fears to overcome. They are truths to accept. Once you accept them, they lose their power over you." Her instructor had no response to that. As reputation grew, so did her friendship with. The spider-like creature had watched her roommate with increasing interest over the months. She had expected the human to fail quickly. Instead, she had watched adapt and survive and succeed against all odds. "You confuse me," said one night as they sat in their room. "On my world, we are taught that the strong survive and the weak die. It is simple. It is nature. But you break that rule. You are weak, but you survive." "Maybe the rule is wrong," suggested. "Rules cannot be wrong. They are rules." "Then maybe the definition of strength is wrong." Set down the book she had been reading. "Your people think strength means physical power, claws and fangs and armor. But what about the strength to think clearly under pressure? What about the strength to adapt when everything changes? What about the strength to keep going when everyone expects you to fail?" His black eyes reflected the dim light. "Those are not kinds of strength on my world. They are on mine. On Earth, we call it resilience. It is the reason my species survived. We were not the strongest creatures on our planet. We were not the fastest, but we had resilience. We adapted. We learned. We refused to disappear." Was quiet for a long time after that conversation. She seemed to be thinking about something important. Did not push her. She had learned that some thoughts needed time to grow. 3 months into the year, the Academy announced a special test. It was called the Trial of Elements. Students would be sent to a planet with extreme conditions and left there for 3 days. The planet's atmosphere was toxic to most species. The temperature shifted from burning hot to freezing cold every 6 hours. The wildlife was aggressive and hungry. Students were allowed to form teams of 2 for this test. Most students immediately paired with members of their own species or with species that had complementary abilities. The strong paired with the fast. The armored paired with the venomous. Nobody wanted to pair with. "I will go with you," said. Looked at her roommate in surprise. "Are you sure? Pairing with me could hurt your ranking. Other students will think you are weak." "Let them think what they want. I have watched you for 3 months. I have seen how you prepare. I have seen how you think. I would rather have a smart partner than a strong one." Smiled, "Thank you." The trial of elements began on a cold morning. Transport ships dropped teams across the planet's surface and landed in a valley surrounded by jagged cliffs. The air was thick with toxic yellow clouds. The ground was covered in sharp black crystals that cut through boots with ease. "How do we survive this?" asked. She was already having trouble breathing despite her natural resistance to toxins. Was studying their surroundings carefully. She noticed that the toxic clouds were heavier in some areas than others. She noticed that certain plants seemed to thrive despite the poison in the air. She noticed that the crystals on the ground were arranged in patterns, as if something had organized them. "We follow the life," she said. "Where there is life, there is a way to survive." They moved carefully through the valley, following the patches of vegetation. His theory proved correct. The plants were filtering the toxins from the air. The closer they stayed to the plants, the easier it was to breathe. By nightfall, they had found a cave where a colony of the filtering plants had grown thick. The air inside was almost clean. They set up camp and prepared for the temperature drop that would come with darkness. The first day passed without major problems. The second day was harder. The wildlife had found them. Creatures called shadow hunters lived on this planet. They were fast, silent, and deadly. They hunted in packs, surrounding their prey before striking from all directions. They had already killed 4 students from other teams and heard the shadow hunters before they saw them. Soft clicking sounds in the darkness, movement at the edges of their vision. They were being surrounded. "We should run," said. Her forearms were raised in a defensive position. Her sharp leg points were ready to strike. "We cannot outrun them," replied. "They are faster than both of us. We need to fight smart." "How?" Looked around the cave quickly. Her mind was racing through options. The shadow hunters were fast and deadly, but they hunted by sound and movement. If she could confuse their senses. Your silk said suddenly. Can you make it vibrate? Looked confused. Yes, but why? The shadow hunters track by sound. If we create noise everywhere, they will not know where to attack. Understanding flashed in black eyes. She began spinning silk rapidly, attaching thin strands to every surface in the cave. The strands vibrated in the air currents, creating a constant humming sound that filled the space. The shadow hunters attacked. They burst into the cave from 3 directions, claws extended, mouths open. But the noise confused them. They struck at silk strands instead of flesh. They crashed into walls instead of prey. They tangled in webs instead of catching their targets. And fought back. Sharp legs pierced the bodies of disoriented hunters, used rocks and improvised weapons to strike at vulnerable spots. The battle was fierce and chaotic, but they were winning. Then one of the shadow hunters got through. It came at from below where she could not see. Its claws slashed across her abdomen, cutting deep into her pale blue flesh. She screamed and fell backward, purple blood spraying across the cave floor. Did not think, she simply acted. She threw herself between and the shadow hunter. She had no weapons. She had no armor. She had nothing but her bare hands and her absolute refusal to let her friend die. The shadow hunter struck at her. Its claws tore across her arm, cutting through muscle and scraping bone. The pain was incredible, but did not stop. She grabbed a sharp crystal from the ground and drove it into the creature's eye. The shadow hunter screamed and fell back, grabbed another crystal and struck again, and again, and again. When the other shadow hunters saw their fall, they retreated into the darkness. They had expected easy prey. They had found something else. Collapsed beside, her arm was badly wounded. Blood was pouring from the cuts. She could barely move, but she forced herself to check on her friend. "Are you alive?" "Yes," whispered. "Because of you, you saved me." That is what friends do. Stared at her with those solid black eyes. Something had changed in her expression. The coldness that had always been there was gone. In its place was something warmer, something deeper. "On my world," said slowly, "we have a tradition. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be repaid. You become bound to them, forever." "That sounds serious," said. She was trying to bandage her arm with strips of cloth. "I was just helping a friend. You do not owe me anything." "I know," said, "but I want to owe you. I want to be bound to you, not because of tradition, because you are the first person who ever saw me as something more than a monster." "Stop bandaging," she looked at with tired eyes. "You are not a monster, you never were." They sat there in the cave, both wounded, both exhausted, surrounded by the bodies of dead shadow hunters. Outside, the temperature was dropping toward freezing. They had survived the attack, but they still had one more day to endure. "We should rest," said finally. "Tomorrow will be hard." "Tomorrow will be easy," replied, "because I will not be facing it alone." For the first time since arriving at Academy, felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt like she belonged. 4 years passed like water through open fingers. Had arrived at Academy as a clerical error, a joke, a fragile creature sent to die among monsters. She had been laughed at, threatened, hunted, and underestimated at every turn. Now she stood in the Hall of Valor, wearing the black uniform of a graduate, waiting to receive her medal. The hall was filled with thousands of beings. Students, instructors, military officials, and representatives from 100 different worlds had come to witness the graduation ceremony. It was the most important event in the galactic military calendar. The graduates of Academy would go on to become generals, admirals, and elite soldiers. They would shape the future of the galaxy. And at the front of the graduating class, standing taller than any physical measurement could show, was. She had finished first in her class. It was not supposed to be possible. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to be prey. Humans were supposed to die in the first year if they even made it past the first week. The records of academy showed no human had ever graduated. Most had never even applied. Had not just graduated, she had excelled. She had beaten students who were stronger, faster, and more naturally gifted than she could ever be. She had done it through intelligence, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept failure. The academy had thrown everything at her. Survival tests in deadly environments, combat training against opponents twice her size, strategic simulations that required thinking 10 moves ahead, psychological evaluations designed to break the strongest minds. She had faced every challenge with the same calm smile she had worn on her first day. Some students had hated her for it. They had tried to hurt her, to sabotage her, to drive her out of the academy. They had failed, had allies now, was always at her side, ready to defend her friend with silk and sharp legs. Other students had come to respect her too. Even some who had once laughed at her now nodded when they passed her in the halls. The graduation ceremony began with a speech from the academy headmaster. He was an ancient creature, so old that nobody remembered what species he had originally been. His body had been modified and rebuilt so many times that he was more machine than flesh. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "Today we honor those who have proven themselves worthy of the name," the headmaster said. "They have survived trials that would destroy lesser beings. They have shown strength, courage, and determination. They are the finest warriors the galaxy has to offer." He paused and looked directly at. "This year, we also honor something unexpected, a being who was never supposed to be here, a being who was sent to us by mistake, a being who, by all logic and reason, should have died in her first week." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew who he was talking about. "Instead," the headmaster continued, "this being has become the top graduate of her class. She has proven that strength is not measured in muscles or claws or armor. She has shown us a kind of strength we did not know existed." He gestured to, "Come forward, graduate." Walked to the center of the stage. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Thousands of eyes watched her move. Some were hostile, some were curious, some were filled with grudging admiration. She did not care about any of them. She was thinking about her grandmother, who had cried when called to tell her about the graduation. She was thinking about, who was watching from the front row with tears in her black eyes. She was thinking about all the students who had underestimated her, who had tried to break her, who had learned the hard way that humans were not prey. The headmaster held up a medal. It was made from a fragment of a dying star, compressed and shaped into a perfect circle. It glowed with soft blue light. It was the most prestigious award the academy could give. "For excellence in all forms of combat, strategy, and survival," the headmaster announced. "For demonstrating that true strength comes from the mind and spirit as well as the body. For proving that any being, regardless of their origin, can achieve greatness." He placed the medal around her neck. The star fragment was warm against her chest. "Congratulations, graduate. You have earned this." "Thank you," said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I have one request, if I may." The headmaster tilted his ancient head. "What is it?" "I would like to say a few words, to my classmates, to everyone watching." Another murmur from the crowd. It was unusual for graduates to speak at the ceremony, but the headmaster nodded slowly. "You have earned that right, speak." Turned to face the audience. She saw familiar faces in the crowd. The reptilian who had laughed at her on her first day was sitting near the back. He was not laughing now. Instructor was standing against a wall, his face unreadable. The insect who had processed her registration was in the far corner, her compound eyes watching. Took a deep breath and began to speak. "4 years ago, I came to this academy by mistake. A tired clerk clicked the wrong button and I was sent to a place where I did not belong. Everyone expected me to die. Some people hoped I would die. They looked at me and saw a fragile creature, easy to break, easy to kill." She paused. The hall was completely silent. "They were wrong. Not because I was secretly strong, not because I had hidden abilities or special powers. They were wrong because they misunderstood what makes a being dangerous. Touched the metal on her chest. The star fragment pulsed with gentle light. My species, humans, we are not impressive by galactic standards. We have no natural weapons. We have no armor. We cannot survive in extreme environments without protection. If you looked at us and saw prey, I would not blame you. Many species have made that mistake. But here is what those species did not understand. Humans are not survivors despite our weaknesses. We are survivors because of them. Every challenge we face, we must overcome with our minds. Every predator we meet, we must outsmart. Every environment we enter, we must adapt to. We do not have the luxury of relying on natural gifts. We have to work for everything. She looked across the crowd, meeting eyes with beings of every shape and size. That struggle made us strong in ways that muscles and claws never could. It taught us to think, to plan, to prepare. It taught us that giving up is not an option. It taught us that the universe does not care if you are big or small, strong or weak. It only cares if you refuse to quit. Smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when she first read her acceptance letter. The smile of someone who had found something interesting. I am not the strongest graduate of this academy. I am not the fastest or the deadliest. But I am proof that those things do not matter as much as everyone thinks. What matters is the fire inside you, the determination to keep going when everything says you should stop, the willingness to face impossible odds and grin like it is a mistake. She paused one final time. The galaxy thought humans were prey. I hope I have shown you different. We are not prey. We never were. We are what happens when prey refuses to accept its place in the food chain. We are what happens when weakness becomes determination. We are what happens when a clerical error becomes a legend. Bowed to the crowd. Thank you for this honor. I will try to be worthy of it. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, slowly, someone in the back started clapping. The sound was strange, coming from clawed hands, but it was unmistakably applause. Others joined in. Soon the entire hall was filled with the sound of thousands of beings showing their respect. Was crying openly now. She stood up from her seat and clapped so hard that her arms blurred. Was nodding his massive head, a strange expression on his reptilian face. Even instructor had raised his hands to join the applause. Stood on the stage and let the sound wash over her. She thought about the scared little girl who had lost her parents. She thought about the stubborn young woman who had refused to run from danger. She thought about all the times she had wanted to quit but kept going anyway. She had not just survived academy, she had conquered it. And she had done it without changing who she was. She was still small. She was still soft. She was still fragile by galactic standards. But she was also unstoppable. After the ceremony, found waiting for her outside the hall. The spider-like creature embraced her friend with all four arms, nearly crushing her. You were incredible, said. That speech will be remembered for generations. I just spoke the truth, replied. Humans are chaos. We turn mistakes into opportunities. It is what we do. Released her and stepped back. What will you do now? You could have any position in any military in the galaxy. Admirals have already sent you offers. Looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, her grandmother was probably making dinner. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were living their lives, unaware that one of their own had just changed how the galaxy saw them. I think, said slowly, I will go home for a while, see my grandmother, eat some real food, remember why I fight. And then, smiled her familiar smile. The smile that had frightened predators and confused enemies and inspired allies. And then I will find the next impossible thing and conquer that too. It is what humans do. She walked toward the transport ships, her metal glowing against her chest, her friend at her side. Behind her, the graduates of Academy watched her go. They were monsters and warriors and killers from 100 different worlds. And every single one of them respected the small human girl who had refused to be prey. The clerical error had become a legend. And this was only the beginning.